This song is really important. The land for the Pitjantjatjara and Yankunytjatjara people.
Today I am remembering the day that we have started the land right. And we got to Armada and we sat down and talked about the land. How can we own our land?
And those people is not with us today. The car was keeping the land right.
Nganampa Manta kapi chokiji kapi chorno. Puawia. Kami nguchamungu kapi nyara chorno pala kanyiningi.
Nganampa Manta muno kami kumanda. Panya walpala juta malla pijangu muno malla werka nguranyang kanangata iritungulu yinangi kaminya chamunya jana.
Piran bajuda jarpang mono palo languru harnang joda jarpara kojo joda ongangi mai chota nyakola kojo jodangku piran kojo jodangku para elondanangi ka kojo jodangku mai ongangi chamangkara ka jana ngoldorengangi panya nganana mai ku ngorpa ere dinyenangi
dan dengar ko nyikijangko la an ko lero blan la weran ko bay tin ka bon ko bay mono mai tin ka bawr bay ere blan la mono ko kangal ko la weran ko la
warong anjal bay waga mama nyarwa de ngo abe bulkan ko bay nang mono wajan bala ngayo la na ko ka malo wana ngaragan wana ko ngoy
Ako yan ko lang makulim na. Kakar ko.
Era palangan nang malung ngama mai ngalkola nendering ang ma monula ngalkola pala nendering kola ya postaka ma pio ko malakan kola ladayan kola ngalkuningi
ere di an balu langoro sebrande na ko jaba werkanu pele dot ana ba sebrande na puari balu wiro yang bala bijango ngoranya nganga mono ngana nya kanyining mono ngana nya nendil bay kola waga mono kwa mis selet crafter manga balu crafter manga de war karing mono balu kung kayu da nending wiro joda kangan na war karing chongo crafter manga ka balu wadi yang bala joda kad nang ka war karing nya ko balaningi ka wiro mala buwan karing ngaparji war karing ngana na wiro ala ka koju bang tudang ko hospital ko danang mono clinic ka war karing nintiringangi wiro ra kung ka koju bede mula jongo rengangi santai mula en manga jongo chuchung ka wiro mula karangi nyana pal.
I first came up to the Pitjantjatjara lands 1958. I graduated from University of Melbourne and was appointed to work at what was then Nganampa Mission. Well, my particular roles, I had to look after the finances. I had a very small budget. I used to do the books and the balances and so forth. I ran the store, and I had Gordon Inkaji, who's still with us here at these celebrations. He worked in the office with me and learned to type and did some of the roles there. I supervised the garden maintenance and generally responsible for the oversight. We had staff meetings once a month, and I'd have the oversight of preparing for them and discussing issues. And of course I was a minister, so I was also conducting services, training people. In a sense, I was here to serve the people.
I would like to thank all of you and all the people who passed on, because they were the key people, and we've started together and we've struggled all the way. But I thank God and the government for joining us for our strongest land right in Australia.
Well, my name is Donald Fraser. I was born at Annabella, grew up here. I went to school here learning about my own language. I can read and write fluently, and I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, I was born in Darwin in 1948 and grew up in country South Australia. Education at Flinders University, South Australia, where I was in the 60s in politics and economics. Then I did postgraduate social work and ended up being posted up here as part of a bond of the state government in 1973. When I arrived, there was no Aboriginal person living in a house. Everyone lived in humpies, shed iron and canvas.
The mission days, the mission run this.
And we moved to a policy of training people so that they could take over their communities, be incorporated. So late 60s, early 70s, we were beginning that stage.
Yeah, the Pitjantjatjara, Yankunytjatjara lands are in the northwest corner of South Australia, with borders on the NT and WA, and abutting them was called the Central Reserve in Western Australia, and the Petermann Reserve in the Northern Territory. So when you put those three states and territories together, there was a whole area of Aboriginal land, which was then reserve land, adjoining each other, but in three different states.
Nindi wiya ngayelo land road ko nindi wiya. Ngana ngayelo ko ningi Nganampa, but still belong to the government before. And Pilaptuin coming in. Kabalong land road wanga jangata ko lin. Balo jabi no. What do you really want? You want a land road? Ka ko ningi land road. Yeah, they started and learned. Nindi ringol.
Somebody told us that the land was belonged to the government, therefore we went to Armada to start the land right, or start talking about the land right, and that's where we've really learned that the land was belonged to the government. We've talked about it and said we're going to have to start talking to the government so that we can get our land back, so that it can be recognised in whitefella world. We've went and bought a lot of HF radios, and which we use to communicate night and day about our future plan.
There was no overarching body to represent the Pitjantjatjara people. Remember too, we worked under a policy of assimilation. It was thought people would train, that they could move into the general society. We began to realise late 60s people weren't wanting to leave the lands, this was their country.
The older people had only just recently moved into the communities, and they're starting to see what happened with their kids and the young people, and they just want to get out of them again and back onto their own land.
We formed a council which was called Pitjantjatjara Council.
The main claim that people immediately put forward was the claim for land rights. That's the thing that brought them together and motivated the council to continue.
That first meeting and subsequent Pitjantjatjara meetings were to come to a unified position about how they approached the government about the land of the three states that were around, about what position that the Anangal would take in terms of the land rights struggle.
When we go to, Budi go to meeting on Bay, all his, staff, advisors, Chungoringo Bay, Malbrara, and we are listening together, Chungungu. After the meeting, when we finish, Munganga, all the staff have a meeting. And when we started to talk about the land right, please leave us alone and go there. Sit on the side there. And some of the government people, they come to that and listen to that, what they're talking about it, what they're thinking. And then but they didn't say no.
One of the effective parts of those meetings that were held every 2 months was, while a lot of the younger men, the Kawaki Thompsons and the Donald Frasers and others would be speaking in the meetings, at night the old men would say round the campfire, now what happened, what were those people saying? And a lot of the real discussion took place in the evenings round the campfires. They'd come back the next day and say, now these old men want to know this.
Because I am the key person that people look after, and they come and talk to me. What was this bloke talking about, this and that? Then I'd inform them or translate them or talk to them.
Pitjantjatjara, Mr. Tanjan, Pramea, Aralaitalango, Pitjala Palro Ngangi, Ganganana, Pulgramokoringo, Pudalanganguia, Manganana, Palpandangana Banara Korungani, Gangonuram Papana, Pulganangari Pibanga, Yuram very Tikarinja.
But I remember the strong reaction. It was a woman lawyer there, and they said, what's this woman talking about giving us this land? This land has always been here. You talk about bits of paper, but that land belongs here in our heads. There were some government advisors suggested they use what was the Northern Territory model of traditional owners, and people suggested we should find out who's the owner for the kangaroo area or the emu area or the different totemic areas. But the people came back and said, no, all the land belongs to all the people. Mandu Wankara, Anangu Wankaragu was the way they expressed it. So that was one of the policies that came from the people that I had to express to the government and to their advisors, and say they want a land title that brings all the land together under one body, but that body is all the people.
Those of us who spoke English gone out and onto lawyers and asking for explanations. And it came to be that obviously freehold title is the highest title that you can get off a government. And Anangu said, well, that's the one they want. And it wasn't that they were asking the government for title to their own land. They were asking the government to give them the best English title they could give them to match the absolute title that they had and still have.
They go to Adelaide, one member. Before I was a Pitjantjatjara chairman, but then they bring it up to the Premier, Don Dunstan,
There was a group of, I think, 6 or 7 senior Anangu men who went down to Adelaide with the lawyer Philip Toyne, and I was there as interpreter and sort of advisor. And we went to Adelaide and met with Don Dunstan in Victoria Square in his buildings there. And that was the first time that, in fact, it was formally put to Dunstan that the Pitjantjatjara Council did not want leasehold land, they wanted freehold land, and that this was the first time it was put to him saying, this is what you've got to give us, freehold title, and this is, we want it inalienable freehold title, so it can never be taken away, and the form of title that vested ownership in the whole of the people.
The land rights movement was going fairly well during the Labor government, but they didn't have control of the upper house, so there were some opposition to passing the suggested bill.
The Liberal government, David Tonkin was, had, in the election, leading up to the elections, they were putting out a policy line that was going to change the legislation that Dunstan had drafted.
The Liberal government announced that they would allow mining, exploration. Now that alerted the people to the dangers of mining, and various interests in Adelaide heard of this, student interests, church groups.
There was in fact a land rights support group formed in Adelaide. This is a flyer which was letterboxed all over Adelaide, which told the land rights story and urged people to vote for the party, obviously, that supported the original bill.
Certificate of recognition. And for the people that's been fighting over the land,
Then, of course, Labor lost the election.
Ka powering ingalo sebenarnya banyak mecetan janto. Ka mecetangan yang nagaringo. Mono Malcolm Price, Petrol Minutes.
The mob up here had to go back into negotiations with Tonkin.
And they arranged to send a lot of the people, contingent of busloads and carloads, went down to Adelaide, and they had the support of this group in Adelaide.
And after that, when we go into that, we go to that Adelaide race course,
Which brings us to tonight's council meeting, slap in the middle of Adelaide's Victoria Park racecourse. The homelands of the Pitjantjatjara are rich in Aboriginal culture. They are also potentially rich in oil, opals and precious metals. The Liberal government says it intends to open up 30,000 square kilometres for mineral exploration. Donald Fraser, why have you come to Adelaide?
I came over to talk about the land. We need the land for our children. It's been always ours, our grandfather and grandmother's been there, and all the bones are there and spirits. So
but maybe if you have mining, you would become rich, you would have much money. Is that bad?
We need the land to live in it, not because of money.
Some of them then met and I interpreted a meeting in the Premier's office.
We went in the ground floor and from the foyer into a lift, and then we went up to the 14th floor and sat down at a big long boardroom desk, with flash chairs and Premier and his gophers all there. And one of the old blokes got his cup of tea and he wandered over to the window and looked out the window and he just dropped everything, and he hadn't realised that he'd been transported by the lift from the ground floor to the 14th floor. He didn't know a lift from anything else. He just thought it was a pretty weird little room he went into before the meeting.
So from that meeting, there emerged the more positive consultations with the Liberal government through the 80s, and then early 81, the legislation was passed.
It is problems. We're in a problem today. Who's going to be going in? Who's going to be, learn about the authority to get the knowledge from the Gilbert? Gilbert's got, more knowledge.
And government juga punya parliamentary committee from Adelaide. Kalau jana kujo buda wangka itu about the Land Rights Act. Ana kujo.
The 8BY Land Act from 25 years ago is something to be celebrated. is something to be built on and something that we should all cherish.
South Australia was the first state to provide traditional owners with direct communal title to their land rather than ownership through a land trust or land council. And this land can never be taken away from you. 25 years ago there was shared optimism for a better future on the lands. Today we recommit ourselves to working in partnership with the people of the lands to recapture that hope and bring happiness to Ananyu.
Today we are not making a strong foundation for our living. I'll show you. No. You try to be a Brexit. People try to be a Brexit land right now.
Ko kolle awandinyi ngana nanya monjongko mono mamangko ngana nanya mantanga kanyiningi ka ngana na ngura nyanga ko walja ala jitu nyinanyi ka cici malaja curta kollo manta nyanga ko walja piti nyinanyi
maya jang ko pal ko ngura nyanga palo la manta ngo maya jang ko pal ko poti anang ko la mantin mangan manjo kata wiyongal langana na yoju man polongana na manti hakaman lango mau ngai wai pala yoju yondo nya ngo ngayo nya na namri ngayo nya wal kamala ka ngayo wal kan no ngala kana na mer pandu ongo bai manti el kule ni nya bari ko be bari tura na kole
Monolam Nganana Kuari Chidro Jinoraji Mankoro Parangalongar Ori Nganana Eriti Japon Minama Wanga Kocho Malpa Kocho Ordolo Kocho Nganana Weong Wangama Weora
I think ngana na jingo kuare ngana na popular ni 25 ian wergan ko nyanga an kuare ngana popular ni chala bai jin nyanga orula balo banyak kuare ngana mulam ko jango bala jutang kawang kacau ngai kana palu pun bodo ala je korani kala ngore di japul kala mo ko dengan yaji Nganampa joda Nganampa bakale pole joda kala wan karo kanyi di jamu ko renji ngana na jarpa nyanga kalau jana ngabar je mala dana melani ngora bandi palu nyamba.
What's gonna happen all those kids when I dying? Who's gonna be strong? Who's gonna be a look after the land? Who's gonna be a strong and go front with the government? You know, if the people, young people, go out in a generation, I'm talking to the generation. You must be wake up and get up and go with Gilbert and sit down and learn. Gilbert got the knowledge and he'll pass it on to you. He will give you key for that, key for the knowledge.